Question 1. By generating the Udana Praana, one can ascend pranic energy up to Ajna Chakra and beyond. Is it possible by merely observing breath, and by its cessation thereby, a spiritual aspirant or sadhaka can reach up to Ajna Chakra and beyond? Answer. By Udana Praana or life force and its ascent through the spinal cord to reach the superconscious state is the Tantric method. This has been discussed in details. By mentally observing the breath in and out, that is by breath observation, and later on gradually its cessation is the Gayatri concept. It is the approach to reach the superconsciousness through breath cessation automatically for a few moments by wakeful awareness of breath. It ceases, stops automatically after some time. Sadhaka does nothing, only observes breath with concentration, looking at the Ajna Chakra by the eyeballs turned upwards. It is basically the Shuniyaka method when no more fresh breath intake is there and inward breath has left the system. It is natural sunya, a void. It is the way of worship of spirit by awareness. Principally, there is a difference of micro or nanosecond between the exhaust of inner breath and intake of the fresh breath. In this micro or nanosecond, spiritual aspirant is without breath. It means he is apparently dead, and with the cosmos, the Almighty Spirit. If this interval is extended by the aspirant, as if he takes breath, by just merely counting as per his wishes, this will indicate that he is in awakening Turiya or transcendental state in that interval, and he is with the Spirit with full awareness. He is basically lively and dead in such moments. This time gap is psychological time between the breaths, and it is the time for the propagation of the spirit. In this gap of breath in and out, the energy is created and exchanged. If the energy is not exchanged, it is the state of death. This worship or awareness of breath is known as Sandhya. This is a Gayatri concept. The time gap without breath is Araha Sandhya. It is like the gap between channels of two rails so that expansion of either rail can be absorbed in this gap. This gap between the subsequent breaths is basically the energy center as the gap between two rails, and energy from the cosmos gets absorbed in that interval, and fresh abundance of energy goes in with the breath by the fresh intake. The more subtle pure energy is absorbed in the gap between the breaths, as if more direct light enters the system, and the sadhaka remains in awakening Turiya state. It leads to sushupti state with time, and sadhaka might enter a deep mental rest in a peaceful state gradually, with more absorption of spiritual energy at the Ajna Chakra. Parshuram has taught this technique. It is a very effective and simple tool for self-absorption. It is Udana Praana Pranishita way of worship. The divine light in sadhaka attracts energy through the nostril in this state. This is also termed as Pran Gayatri. The gap between breaths is Brahma. More the gap, the greater energy can get merged or absorbed with the intake coming breath. This process is also termed as Turiya karma. This is spanda, or the vibration of Gayatri. Exhaust of breath and not being intake is the Brahmovit state. This is also termed as Yagopavita and Gayatri Japa. This is not the outward Yagopavita. It is the highest inward Yagopavita. If one follows this way of japa, then he does not need to wear an outward Yagopavita and follow the external rituals of all kinds. This is the Sandhya Vandhana by yogis without performing the external rituals at all. This is the supreme worship of Gayatri. A Brahmin needs to perform Upanayana, Sandhya Vandana 3 times a day. The breath observation and attaining Shuniyaka or void inside is itself a Upanayana. No more Sandhya is required if Sadhaka can attain this level of performing Sandhya by breath. Absence of breath with awareness is the real Gayatri Sandhya. On the other hand, yogi perform Turiya Sandhya by breath control. This is Tantric Sandhya, a tantric mode of upasana. As we know, eyes can detect the changes in a picture on screen if the movement of the picture is within a certain minimum number of times. If the change in picture movement increases to a greater number of times, then eyes cannot detect. Similarly, Shuniyaka can be observed if breath intake and exhaust is within some frequency. If this frequency is further reduced, then the awareness ceases to exist and time between breaths intake and exhaust, being a long gap, cannot be observed. Sadhaka becomes unaware of breath, and then he is more time with spirit, and thus he can reach to Turiya state at the Ajna Chakra, and then the automatic conversion of prana to light takes place that ascends automatically to apex center without awareness and merges with the supernal. Even at the Ajna Chakra, intuition of sadhaka increases. This increase of gap between the breaths in and breath out gives wonderful effects. This is basically a spiritual way of breathing, a Gayatri mode. This spiritual practice or sadhana turns into Tantric Sandhya Upasana when awareness of breath changes to unawareness. It is then the stage of Samadhi in gradual steps. At this stage, even if one is skilled, he is totally unaware of this happening. This may happen when Udana Praana arrives little above Ajna Chakra, that is to the Akula Chakra. From this level onwards, one reaches from the known to the unknown zone, and then from unknown to deep unknown zone. One can experience the primitive mystery of the cosmos. However, one cannot describe this. This is an Amani state that is beyond words and mind. Neither word nor mind can describe this state. This is the science of the soul. At this state, the breath stops or gets suspended, and Udana Prana is gradually transformed into divine light. This experience cannot be described as the coitus experience of the couple during the climax of romance, because this is beyond words, which both partners experience during a few seconds of mergence or climax. Same way, these mysteries of experience cannot be described. This all happens in the psychosomatic plane. This cannot be explained since it is beyond concepts. It is an actionless action. This can be described by philosophy since it is an abstract experience. Abstract can be dealt with philosophy only. Merely relative experiences can be explained and discussed on the horizontal worldly plane. This abstract experience is visualized after cessation of complete breath. Only then one becomes totally inactive and steps in the state of Shuniyaka or void. At this state, there is no mind, no thought, no awareness, and such experiences are beyond apprehension. The increase of gap between breaths finally takes to such a high level and turns the physical body into the spirit and divine light. And then there is nothing beyond this. It is the state of Savikalpa Samadhi that is beyond any description and apprehension.